You probably noticed that you frequently come across propaganda in the form of memes, and you can probably also recognize them because some of them are really low effort. But there are others that are more subtle or more complex, and even if you recognize them, if you don't understand how they try to influence you, sooner or later they will affect you, without you even noticing. The following memes specifically focus on the topic of feminism and try to argue against it with dishonest methods. And this video is not about whether feminism is good or bad. You can argue for or against it by explaining the positive and negative consequences of gender equality. These memes, however, do not do that. They use fallacies to try to influence your political opinion. Some of them are very simple and you probably immediately recognize the fallacy used. Others are more complicated, and using only a single sentence, they contain multiple fallacies that are harder to recognize, and everything in between. As you probably guessed, the first one uses a simple ad hominem. Since many people will describe the woman as ugly, her argument is clearly wrong, because that's how arguments work. Others use simple cases of the strawman fallacy. Clearly, a policy that treats men and women unequally is intended to work towards equality. And you could call me out that the feminist movement is not about equality, but about female superiority, and then give you an example like this. But we will talk about that later. The next meme is an implicit argument against the right to work for women, presenting a false dichotomy through cherry-picked examples and the strawman fallacy. So the false dichotomy is that you either work for a boss who hates you or a family that loves you. Clearly, there is no circumstance in which a woman is stuck in an abusive household and has no way of escaping it simply because she has nowhere to go and cannot afford rent and food because she has no income. Similarly, there is no way that someone actually finds a job that is fulfilling and where there is a genuinely nice environment to work in, or just starting their own business. The strawman fallacy lies in confusing the policy itself with the outcomes that have multiple inputs apart from the policy itself. The policy that makes these outcomes possible, both the good and the bad. It implicitly argues that the goal of feminism is to fight against women being stay-at-home mothers and to force them to be employees. Their goal was to provide a chance to women to make a decision between these two, or any other alternatives. A goal that they have achieved, and if someone wants to be a stay-at-home mom or father, there is nothing that stops them, apart from, things costing money. So what if someone who says that they are a feminist and say things like this or this? If a feminist says it, it's pretty solid evidence that feminism is about this and not about gender equality, isn't it? I could say that they aren't a real feminist, but that would just be the no true Scotsman fallacy, wouldn't it? Well, no and no. So, in order, presenting a single person or even multiple people who claim to be feminist and say something that is perceived negatively and then argue that the entire group holds that position is a strawman fallacy. It is harder to recognize than a simple strawman, because this form of argument relies on another fallacy. After all, if a feminist says what feminism is, then it must be true, doesn't it? Well, this last sentence would be the third kind of fallacy. So here is how it works. The last part, arguing that a feminist must know better what feminism is about than someone who isn't, is an appeal to authority. It is like saying that I, as a male, know more about the male reproductive organs than a female urologist. And if it would come to discussing it, I would be right simply because I have these organs and she doesn't, even though she would be more likely to be right. And not just because she is a urologist. That would be another example of appeal to authority. But because given her time spent studying the subject, she can reference research and studies that would prove her point. Also, if someone has the property of being a feminist, or say that they have this property, and the property of having a certain opinion, then if someone else also has the property of being a feminist, must therefore also have the same property of holding the same opinion, right? And by this very deliberate phrasing, you probably recognize that this is the association fallacy, an argument that states if A has property X and Y, and B also has the property of X, then it must also have the property of Y. It is easy to see why this is a fallacy, if you just refer to birds having two legs and being able to fly. So if I have two legs, I can fly too. Well, I can purchase an airplane ticket, and if it is not a Boeing, then I will probably fly too. But that isn't really the same thing, is it? This combination of using the association fallacy to establish a strawman fallacy is also used to argue that every immigrant wants to establish a caliphate, or that every conservative wants to kill gay people or brown people, or that liberals want to turn your children gay and make them worship Satan, and the list goes on. because it is really easy. You just have to find one person from a group with a propaganda-worthy statement and you are good to go. Now you can falsely argue that the entire group holds the same opinion. It is a pretty common method, and since as I saw no one talks about it, let alone gave it a name, I unilaterally decided to call it the false representative fallacy. Also, what about the no-true Scotsman fallacy? If I claim that they aren't a real feminist, would I be right? Of course I would be. That's why I have 68 subscribers, which is not nice but not terrible. It would be no true Scotsman fallacy if I said that she's not a feminist because she doesn't have blue hair, and all true feminist, well, you get it. It would be an arbitrary requirement set out by me that has nothing to do with feminism. If I say that she is not a feminist because she does not treat men and women equally, that would not be the no true Scotsman fallacy, because not treating men and women equally goes against the core concept of feminism. More propaganda memes explained in this video. Huge thanks to my Patreons J. Brandon and Ardabon, so I can produce high quality and informative videos for you, and thank you for watching.